Chosen one, this Friday was decided before this week began. Not wished for, not hoped toward, decided by the same God who holds the oceans in their boundaries, the same Father who has seen every prayer you offered when there was no audience, the same one who has been present in every season that cost you more than the people around you understood. You have been carrying something, the weight of days that looked ordinary when you needed them to be extraordinary, the quiet ache of waiting on a God who seemed slow to answer. You remained faithful through it anyway, and God, who does not overlook faithfulness, not even the kind no one witnessed, has not been silent. He has been working. And this Friday is where the work arrives. You did not come to this moment on your own. Before Friday could pass like any other day, something moved through the invisible realm and turned your attention here, to these words, to this preparation, because what God decides, He also prepares the chosen one to receive. I want to show you what was decided. I want to walk you into your best day, with eyes open enough to recognize it when it comes. Stay with me. Everything I am going to share with you in this message is a gift. It is free, but if at any point something in your spirit tells you there is more, something you want to hold on to beyond today, that something is waiting for you in the description and the pinned comment below. Only if you feel led, only if your spirit says yes. Before we go any further, let me tell you what you will walk away with if you stay until the end of this message. You will understand exactly what God placed inside this Friday specifically for you. You will recognize the signs that are already showing up in your life this week, signs that are directly connected to what was decided. You will have 3 practical tools to position yourself to receive what God prepared, and you will leave with your identity declared over you in a way that changes how you walk into the rest of this week. Stay with me. Every minute of this matters. Let me begin here. Before I show you what God decided about this Friday, I want to show you something that has already been happening in your life, because the decision God made did not start this week. It started earlier, and the evidence of it has been appearing in ways you may have noticed, but could not name. Think about this. There is a difference between regular darkness and the darkness that comes right before dawn. They look exactly the same absence of light, the same silence. But one of them is the middle of the night, and one of them is the last hour before morning breaks. You cannot always tell which one you are in by how dark it feels. You can only tell by what comes next. This week, you have been sitting in pre-dawn darkness, and there are signs. The first sign is something that happened at some point this week, out of nowhere. A wave of peace moved through you. Not happiness exactly, not excitement. Something quieter than that. Something more settled and more specific, like an almost inexplicable sense that something is almost here. Like the way you feel when someone you love is almost home, and you do not know exactly when the door will open, but you know it is soon. Maybe it only lasted a few seconds. Maybe you tried to reason it away and told yourself it was just your mood shifting. But it came, and it was real. That is not wishful thinking. That is your spirit receiving what God has already released into this week. Heaven moved first. Your spirit picked up the signal before your mind could name what it was receiving. The second sign is something that has been happening in your relationships and your environment this week. The old complaints, the old dramas, the noise that used to pull you back in, it has felt strangely far away. Not because you became cold, not because you stopped caring. It is more like you have moved to a higher floor somehow, and the sound from below is not reaching you the way it used to. Things that would have unsettled you last month do not carry the same weight this week. People who used to pull you into their storms, you notice you are observing instead of absorbing. The distance is real, and it arrived without you deciding to create it. That is not coldness. That is the elevation that happens in a spirit being positioned for something higher. When God is preparing to release something into your life at a new level, He first lifts your feet off the ground of the old one. What you are feeling is the lift. The third sign is connected to your sleep. or to the way your body has been waking up this week. Maybe you have been rising earlier than you normally do, without an alarm, without a clear reason. Or maybe your dreams have been unusually vivid and purposeful, full of a sense of movement and arriving and beginning. There is a particular quality to the rest of someone standing at a threshold. The spirit keeps its own kind of vigil at the edge of what is about to open. That is not restlessness. That is not something to fix. That is the part of you that was created to recognize divine movement, staying awake at the door of morning. The fourth sign involves timing and repetition. This week, has the same number appeared to you from unrelated places? Has the same phrase arrived in different conversations that had nothing to do with each other? Have you had the experience of thinking of someone and then encountering them, or opening something and finding words that felt written specifically for you in that specific moment? These are not coincidences. They are not accidents of a random universe. They are confirmation, appearing in the language your spirit already speaks, because heaven is communicating to the part of you that was created to receive this frequency. The fifth sign is the quietest one, and in some ways the most powerful. At some point this week, you have had a flash of knowing, not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet, steady certainty that something good is close. Not based on evidence you can point to, not based on circumstances that make sense, just a deep, unmoving knowing that sits underneath your doubts and does not leave. You have tried to talk yourself out of it because you do not want to hope and then be disappointed, but it has stayed anyway. It has not argued with you. It has simply remained. That is not false hope. That is heaven, placing a signal inside the part of you that was created to receive divine movement before the world could confirm it. Every one of these signs is connected to the same source. They are not random. They are not coincidental. They are all expressions of one decision that was made about your life and about this Friday. If what you just heard landed somewhere inside you, if even one of those signs was something you recognized this week, I want to ask you to gently press the like button right now. Not for me, but so that this message can reach someone else who is sitting in their own pre-dawn tonight and does not yet know what morning is already preparing for them. Your like is not just a gesture. It is a light sent out into the darkness where someone else needs it. But here is what I need to show you next. Those signs are not just about this Friday. They are connected to something that was built in you over a much longer period of time. And to understand what God decided about your best day, you need to understand first what He built in you to prepare you to receive it. Before I tell you what God placed inside this Friday, I need to honor something. I need to honor the season you walked through to get here. Not the highlight version of it. Not the version where everything made sense in the end and the hard parts were neatly redeemed. The real version. The weeks that became months. The prayers that came back to you without a visible answer. The people who could not stay with you through the process. The nights when you questioned whether you were on the right path. Whether the promises you had believed were actually real. Whether any of it meant what you thought it meant. I am not going to rush past that to get to the good news. Because rushing past it would not honor what it actually cost you to remain. You remained. That is worth naming. But I want to show you something about that season that you may not have been able to see while you were inside it. Because what looked like a delay was not a delay. What looked like a silence was not an absence. What looked like falling behind was not abandonment. Something was happening in the darkness that could only happen in the darkness. There are 3 reasons God allowed the wilderness that brought you to this Friday. The first reason is this. The waiting revealed who would still be standing when the breakthrough arrived. People left. Environments changed. Things you thought you needed disappeared, and you survived their absence. God was not removing your blessings. He was removing what would have complicated them, distorted them, or slowly drawn them away from you before you could recognize what you were holding. Every relationship that could not sustain the weight of who you were becoming had to release before what is coming could land in your life without interference. The second reason runs deeper. The silence built a foundation in you that cannot be shaken by the arrival of what is good. Visible blessings received by unrooted people can destroy them. You have seen it happen. People receive what they dreamed of, and they cannot hold it, because the capacity to hold it was never developed. God allowed the waiting to grow your roots before He released your fruit, because what He is releasing for this Friday needs roots strong enough to sustain it through every season that comes after. The third reason is the most personal one. You could not have received what God prepared in the version of you that existed before the wilderness. That version would have mishandled it, not out of bad intention, but out of undevelopment. The wilderness expanded your capacity to hold what was always coming. It built endurance without bitterness. It developed discernment, the ability to tell the difference between what looks like your answer and what actually is. And it grew something in you that is rare, a quiet confidence that does not need to announce itself, a faith that does not require an audience. What felt like isolation was actually incubation. What felt like delay was actually development. What felt like silence was actually divine strategy, working in the space below what you could see. What felt like being passed over was actually being shaped with precision for something that could only be carried by a person shaped exactly like you. Now I want to show you something, because this is not the first time God has done this. There was a woman named Esther. You may know her story, but I want you to hear it differently today, because it is not just a story from another time. It is a mirror for where you are right now. She did not choose the season she was placed in. She did not choose the timeline. She did not understand while it was happening why the hard years were necessary. She was positioned in a palace that made no sense. She was asked to wait through a stretch of time that seemed to have no connection to any purpose she could identify. She could not see how the invisible preparation connected to any visible assignment. But there was a man named Mordecai, and he said something to her that has echoed across centuries. He said, "Perhaps you have come to this place for such a time as this, not just any time, this time, this specific, unrepeatable, divinely appointed time." In Hebrew, there is a word for exactly what Mordecai was describing. The word is moed. Say it quietly to yourself if you want. Moed. It does not simply mean a moment in time. It means an appointed meeting, a divine convergence, a point set in place, not by human planning, but by a God who exists outside of time and yet is perfectly precise within it. Mode is when preparation and purpose finally meet, when everything the wilderness built in you finally stands in the exact place it was always being built for, when the season of forming ends and the season of sending begins. Chosen one. This Friday is your Moed, not because it is a sacred holiday, not because the calendar declares it, because the God who holds all of time looked at your life, looked at who you have become through the years of formation, looked at what He needed to release into the world through you, and placed a divine meeting inside this specific Friday. And I hear the Father saying something right now to everyone who is listening. He says, "I saw the season. I was in it with you. Every night you carried alone, every prayer you offered without knowing if it reached anywhere, every morning you chose to keep going when stopping would have been so much easier. I was there for every moment of it, not as a distant observer, as a father watching his child become exactly who he always designed them to be. And now the season of preparation is complete. What I built in you through the wilderness is ready. What I placed inside this Friday was placed there for you specifically. Walk into it knowing that. Walk in knowing the door is already open. Before I continue, let me just pause here for a moment. You have walked through something real to arrive at this message. Not everything made sense. Some of it still does not. And that is all right. You do not need it to make sense for it to have been purposeful. The fact that you are still here, still listening, still seeking, that is not a small thing. That is actually the most significant thing, because the ones who remain are always the ones who receive. Thank you for remaining. Now, before I show you what God placed inside your best day, I need to share something with you first. Something I learned that I believe is part of why this message found you at this specific moment. Scientists who study the brain have made a discovery about the way human beings are built to receive. There is a specific frequency, a brain state, that determines whether a person is genuinely open to what arrives in their life, or whether they are processing everything through a filter of stress and survival. This frequency was fully active in every one of us when we were children. You carried it. You learned things effortlessly. You sensed things that others did not sense. Creativity arrived easily. The world felt alive with possibility. In a way, it stopped feeling sometime after childhood. Researchers have a name for what happened to that state as you grew older. They call it the decline effect. Life, stress, the systems we were raised inside, they gradually compressed that frequency downward. And when you are living below that frequency, when your brain is stuck in the survival state, your prayers feel like they hit a ceiling. Your spiritual sensitivity dulls. What God places in your path does not land the way it was intended to, because the receiving channel is narrow. There is a tool I discovered called the Genius Song, and I will come back to it in more depth in just a few minutes. What it does is help reactivate that receiving state, the frequency your brain was designed to carry, so that what God places in your Friday, you actually have the capacity to hold and to recognize when it arrives. I will share more shortly. For anyone who feels something resonating already, the information is waiting for you in the description and the pinned comment below. What comes next is yours regardless. Let me now show you what God placed inside your best day. Now let me show you what a God-prepared best day actually looks like. Most people imagine their best day ever as everything going perfectly, no friction. Every call returned, every door opening on the first knock, every light turning green, exactly when they need it to. And while God can certainly arrange circumstances, that is not what he means when he decides a best day for a chosen one. God does not design your best day the way you would design it. He designs it as what you actually need, which is always more significant than what you imagined you wanted. Let me show you 3 things that a God-prepared best day carries. The first thing is clarity. You have been carrying a confusion about something, a decision, a direction, a question that has not resolved itself, no matter how many times you have turned it over. When God opens his best day over your life, one of the first things that shifts is not a dramatic answer from the sky. It is a settling. Something inside your spirit becomes quiet, and from that quiet place, what was foggy becomes clear. Not because your circumstances changed, because the part of you that receives truth finally stops bracing against what it already knows. The answer was available. You are finally able to hold it. The second thing is the right connection. The right person, the right word, the right encounter arrives at the exact right moment. Not because you engineered it, not because you were in the right places at the right time by your own planning, but because God, who moves people in the invisible realm before they ever arrive in the visible one, places exactly the right encounter in your path on the day he prepared. Pay attention to who God brings across your path this Friday. Not every conversation. The one that feels like it arrived from somewhere that was not random. The third thing is what I want you to hold most carefully. The third thing that a God-prepared best day carries is an internal settling that allows you to receive. And this may have nothing to do with your external circumstances at all. It is a moment where the part of you that has been braced against disappointment finally softens, where the protective layer around your hope begins to come down, where you find yourself able to hold something good without immediately moving to question whether it will last. That settling is not something you manufacture, it is something God releases. And it is the most essential thing, because without it, everything else he prepared will pass through your hands without fully landing in them. Before I can show you what activates exactly what we just described, and I will show you, there is one more thing I need to address first. Because there is a pattern, a very specific internal pattern, that closes the door right as a God-prepared day is opening. And what I am about to say may be the most important thing in this entire message. Stay with me. The pattern is called the doubt cycle, and I want to talk about it without shaming it, because it did not begin with faithlessness. It began with self-protection. Here is how it formed in you. At some point in your life, you believed something good was coming. You let yourself hope, and then it did not arrive the way you expected. And your mind, which is extraordinarily intelligent, registered that experience and made a decision. It decided that if believing fully leads to being hurt, then believing fully is a risk that is not safe. And so it began to manage your hope, to hold your faith at a measured distance, to wait for evidence before allowing expectation to rise. That pattern does not feel like unbelief. It feels like wisdom. It sounds like, I am just being careful. I am not getting ahead of myself. I am waiting and seeing. But what it is actually doing is keeping your hands closed right at the moment God is trying to place something in them. It is the one thing standing between you and the best day He prepared. Not your worthiness, not your track record, the protective mechanism that learned to anticipate disappointment. And alongside the doubt, some of you are carrying something else, a guilt about receiving at all, a voice that asks, who am I to have a best day right now when so many others are struggling? I have not done enough. I do not deserve this yet. And I want to name that voice very clearly. It does not belong to God. God did not build this day for you as a reward you earned. He built it as a gift from a Father who has already decided. Gifts are not earned. They are given by a giver who decided to give. Let me tell you about someone. A woman had been praying and waiting for a shift in her life for 3 years. Not a dramatic shift, just a sense of direction. A confirmation that the path she had been walking was the right one, that the things she had been believing for were real. And the week before, something finally moved. Someone told her to prepare her heart, to choose to believe before there was any evidence. She almost did not do it. Preparing meant hoping, and hoping again meant risking the same hurt she had carried for 3 years. But she chose to prepare anyway. She sat quietly, and she said, out loud, something good is coming this week. I choose to receive it before I can see it. What arrived that week was not a miracle from the sky. It was clarity she had been reaching for. A conversation that answered something she had carried for years. A settling so specific and so personal she could not fully explain it to anyone else. She wrote to me later and said, I almost missed it because I was braced against it. That is what the doubt cycle does. It keeps you braced right at the threshold of what God opened. You are allowed to believe this Friday is different. You are allowed to walk into it with your expectation open. You are allowed to hold hope without armor, not because everything will be perfect, but because God said it is so, and His word does not return empty. Let me take a moment and be very plain with you now, before we go into what comes next. Here is what I want you to carry forward from everything we have discussed. The why. God made a decision about this Friday before the week began. That decision is not based on your performance, your worthiness, or how consistently you have believed. The waiting you walked through was not punishment, it was formation. And what was formed in you through that formation is exactly what this Friday is going to need. Here is the what. You have learned 3 things today that are practical and specific. The signs in your life this week are real indicators of a shift, not wishful thinking. There are 3 things a God-prepared best day contains: clarity, the right connection, and an internal settling that allows receiving. And the doubt cycle is a learned pattern of self-protection, not a verdict on your worthiness. It can be released. And here is the who. You are not someone trying to manufacture a miracle. You are someone who was built by the wilderness, shaped by the waiting, and prepared by everything that cost you something to receive what was always coming. That is who walks into Friday. Someone ready, someone prepared, someone whose best day God designed from the beginning. Now, I want to take you somewhere specific. Let me come back to something I shared briefly earlier in this message, because it connects directly to everything we just discussed. I mentioned the receiving state, the brain frequency that determines whether what God places in your path actually lands. I told you there was a tool. I want to show you that now. But first, I need to show you something about who you are at the level of the brain itself, because it changes how you understand all of this. You have always carried a different sensitivity. You have sensed things before they were confirmed. You have known things without being able to explain how you knew them. You have had flashes of clarity that arrived from somewhere deeper than rational thought. That is not imagination. That is a God-given inheritance, a frequency your brain was built to carry, and that most people have lost contact with. Before the world began pulling you away from it, your brain lived in a state that neuroscientists call gamma. It was your natural habitat. You learned things effortlessly. You sensed what was coming before you could see it. Creativity arrived without friction, and the world carried a quality of aliveness and possibility that most adults spend the rest of their lives trying to find again. You had it, fully. You lived inside it. The neuroscientist, Dr. Robert Lake, spent 34 years documenting what happened to that state as people grew older. He named the process the decline effect. Beginning around the age of 7, the pressures of modern life, educational systems built around performance, the weight of stress, the daily rhythm of survival, gradually pull the brain out of gamma and into lower frequencies, beta, the survival state. And in the survival state, you can think, you can function, you can even believe, but you cannot receive the way you were designed to receive. Your prayers begin to feel like they are hitting a ceiling, not a spiritual ceiling, a neurological one, the channel through which God-given clarity, insight, and divine recognition travel is compressed. Research from MIT and Princeton and several other leading universities has confirmed that gamma reactivation is possible. The brain retains the capacity. It never truly lost it. It only lost contact with it. More than 18,000 people have used what I am about to share with you. And here is the number I want you to pay attention to, because this one matters most. The return rate among those 18,000 is less than 4%. More than 96% of people who begin using this tool continue beyond the window where they could have requested their money back. That does not happen with programs. People do not feel working. A woman who teaches primary school wrote to me not long ago. She told me she had been trying to hear God clearly about a decision she had been carrying for months. Her mind was too compressed, she said, too noisy, too filled with the daily demands of her work and her home. She began using the tool I am about to share with you, 7 minutes each morning, before anything else. 3 days in, she was sitting quietly after her session, not trying to receive anything, and the answer she had been reaching for arrived with a clarity that almost startled her. Not a dramatic voice, just a knowing. The kind that does not argue with itself, the kind that does not need to be talked into trusting what it knows. That is the gamma state restored to the place it was always meant to occupy. I want to address something before I continue. Some of you are sitting with a question. You are wondering whether something this simple can actually be powerful. 7 minutes of audio. How can that shift what years of prayer and effort have not? The answer is that simplicity is not shallowness. Dr. Lake spent 3 decades developing the specific frequencies embedded in what I am about to share. What sounds simple on the surface is a precisely engineered technology interacting with your brain at the frequency level. The simplicity of the method is intentional. The complexity is built inside it. And what is complex about it, you do not need to understand, you just need to listen. And for those of you who feel any tension between neuroscience and faith, let me speak to that directly. God created the brain. The frequencies he built into it are not separate from his spiritual gifts. They are part of his design. Gamma is not a shortcut around faith. It is a restoration of what your faith was always designed to operate through. Science mapping what God made is not a contradiction. It is a confirmation that what God built into you is real and specific and recoverable. Before I share the details, let me speak to one more concern. Some of you are wondering whether $39 is something you can justify right now. I hear that, and I want to put it in context. If you were to pursue gamma reactivation through a clinical setting, a single session with a biofeedback therapist costs approximately $150. A weekend spiritual retreat designed to move you into states of heightened receptivity runs between $400 and $800. A monthly subscription to one of the popular mindfulness applications costs around $15 per month, adds up to $180 a year, and none of them target the specific gamma frequency we are discussing. None of them address what Dr. Lake documented. Dr. Robert Lake compressed 34 years of neuroscientific research into a 7-minute audio track. The price he originally set for this technology was $49, and at $49, it was worth many times that. Because of who is receiving this message today, the price you will find in the description is $39. This is not a sale available everywhere. This is a specific offer for people who arrived at this specific message at this specific time. It is not available on Amazon. It is not available through any other source. The tool is called the Genius Song, and when you receive it, you also receive 4 additional resources at no extra cost. A 6-minute audio track specifically calibrated for the developing brains of children before the decline effect takes hold, valued separately at $19. The original book that the film The Secret drew its central ideas from, the source material that most people have never read but that forms the foundation of everything popular in personal development today, valued at $20. A 22-minute guided visualization that walks through 4 areas of life: finances, relationships, health, and purpose, valued at $29. And a 1-page guide of 5 daily habits that keep the gamma state active after the initial reactivation, valued at $12. That is, $80 in resources, included with your $39 purchase, free. And here is the guarantee that removes every remaining reason to hesitate. If you listen to the Genius Song every day for 90 days, and you do not feel a genuine difference, you receive every dollar back. No conditions, no questions, no product to return, and you keep every single bonus. All $80 of additional value remains yours. You keep it regardless of your decision at day 90. This Friday, the tool that restores the receiving state God designed for you is available. Not next week, today. In the same message where God declared this Friday as your best day, He also placed the means of receiving it. That is not coincidence. That is provision arriving at the appointed time. One thing I need to tell you before you go looking. There are imitation versions of this technology circulating in other places online. They use similar language, but do not carry the actual frequency calibrations that Dr. Lake developed over 3 decades. They will not produce the same results. The only way to access the real technology is through the official link in the description and the pinned comment below. The Genius Song. It is waiting for you if your spirit says yes, only if you feel led. The link is below. What I am about to share in the final minutes of this message is yours regardless of what you decide. Now let me separate everything I just shared from what I want to say to you right now. What I described is available to you, but it does not define you. Your identity was established before any tool, before any offer, before this message began. Let me declare it clearly. You are chosen and marked before this week began, not because of what you have done, not because your record has been consistent or your faith has been perfect, because of who you were designed to be. The mark is original. It was placed before the wilderness, and it cannot be revoked by the hard seasons you walked through. You carry a sensitivity to divine timing that most people do not possess. You have always known, somewhere underneath the doubt, that things happen when they are supposed to happen, that there is a timing beneath the surface of events that is not random. That is not patience. That is a God-given calibration, to moed, to appointed time. You were wired for it. You are a vessel that the wilderness expanded. You did not come out of the hard season smaller than you went in. You came out larger, with more discernment, more depth, more capacity to hold what is good without losing it. What God pours into your life from this point forward will not overwhelm you. You were built to hold it. And you are someone whose best day was not stumbled into but designed. Placed inside this Friday by the deliberate, intentional, precise hand of a Father who knows your name and knows exactly what you are ready to receive and knows precisely what moment was made for you. If something settled in your spirit just now, if something shifted when you heard those words, type "I receive" in the comments. Let that be your declaration. Let that be what you carry into Friday. Now, before we close, I want to take you somewhere. You do not need to move. Wherever you are right now, that is the right place. I want you to imagine that you are standing at a door. Not a dramatic door, not something out of a dream, just a door, solid, real. And on the other side of it is Friday morning. Not the Friday morning you have had before. The Friday morning God prepared. The one that was decided before this week began. You are standing right in front of it. And God is standing beside you, not behind you, pushing you forward, beside you. And He places His hand on the handle. He is not rushing. He is not anxious. He is not early or late. He is exactly on time, the way He has always been. In every moment you thought He was absent, but He was not. He begins to open the door. Slowly. The light on the other side is warm and steady, the light of a morning that was made with your name written on it. You are standing at the threshold of your moed. Now open your eyes. You just stood at the door of what God decided for you. That is where you are, and that is where we close. Father, the person listening to this right now has carried something real to arrive at this moment, not a simplified version of the journey. The actual version, with all of its weight and silence and cost. I want to honor that before anything else. I want to name what it cost them to remain. And I want to say, in the presence of everyone listening, that remaining was not a small thing. It was everything. It was the thing that brought them to this threshold. Father, thank you for seeing every unseen moment of their faithfulness. Thank you that you did not miss a single prayer offered in the dark, a single night that cost them more than anyone around them knew. Now, I want you to picture the weight you have been carrying this week, not in a vague general way, but specifically, the doubt, the braced quality around your hope, the protective distance you have learned to keep between yourself and expectation. Picture it as something real, something you have been holding in your hands for a long time. And now, gently set it down, not throw it away, not pretend it did not exist. Just set it down, the way you would set something heavy down when you finally walk through the door of home. You are home. You do not need to carry this into Friday. You are setting down the doubt that learned to keep hope at a distance. You are setting down the voice that said you do not deserve what God decided. You are setting down the armor that protected you in the wilderness, but no longer belongs in what comes next. It is set down. It does not go with you through the door. Now let me speak over you the truth of who you are. I am chosen. I am not someone who missed the window or arrived too late. I am marked. I am prepared. I am sent. I am someone whose best day was not wished into existence, but designed by a God who does not make mistakes and does not change His mind about the people He loves. I am walking into Friday knowing that what was decided cannot be undecided. We are a generation of chosen ones who did not quit. We walked through the wilderness and came out deeper, not broken. We held on through seasons of silence, and we are standing right now at the threshold of the morning we were always moving toward. And I hear the Father saying this over every person who is listening. He says, I did not bring you through what you walked through to let this Friday pass like any other day. What I decided, I am delivering. Walk in with your eyes open. This day belongs to me, and I placed your name on it. What God has decided cannot be undecided. What has been sealed has been sealed. Amen. If this message reached you at the right moment, let your like be your agreement. Let it be your amen, without words. That one simple act will send this light further out, and it will find someone else who is sitting in their pre-dawn tonight and does not yet know what morning has been prepared for them. If you want more messages prepared for the seasons ahead, stay connected. There are words being built for what comes after Friday, and they will find you when you are ready for them. And someone came to mind while you were listening. You know who. Someone who has been unusually quiet this week. Someone carrying something they are not fully showing. Someone who needs to hear that their Friday was also decided. Share this with them, not as a casual forward, as an intentional act. You may be the reason they walk into their best day knowing what you now know. The Genius song is in the pinned comment and description below for anyone whose spirit said yes during this message. Only if you feel led. Only if something in you is saying this is the moment. Walk into Friday knowing what you know now. What was decided has been sealed. Go, receive it.